Patrick Sanchez, Patrick Sanchez.
And your title as well.
I am the president of the National Education Association of Las Cruces.
Cool. So you have a case kind of coming up in relation to the NEA.
Yeah,
Could you
we're
tell me
going
about
to
that?
file a lawsuit against the New Mexico PED, the New Mexico Public Education Department, run by Secretary-designate Hannah Scandera. And it's basically against this new evaluation system that the PED has imposed all across the state.
Gotcha. And what's the case taking? Like, where is it going?
In a nutshell, what we're saying is that in New Mexico law, it's actually New Mexico Annotated Code, Section 22-10A-19, very specific in New Mexico. It gives the authority to the PED to come up with a uniform way of evaluating teachers, but it leaves it to the districts, the local school districts and the local superintendents to promulgate the way that that's done. And she has totally usurped the power that the legislature gave to the local school boards, local superintendents, in conjunction with unions that through the New Mexico law are allowed to collectively bargain. So for years we had come up with the way to evaluate teachers.
When you say collectively bargain, you're saying collectively bargain for the way in which evaluations are done?
Absolutely. Each school district was left, according to the law, to come up with their own system. Now, of course, you had the uniform standards set by the PED, and that was the way it was always done. And now, instead of using the law, the PED has come up with a rule to govern this process.
Gotcha.
And we say, no, no. And obviously, what it comes down to is the new system is really stupid, and that's the technical term we're using. They're using test scores. 50% of a child's test scores in your classroom will judge me as a professional. And it's ridiculous. It really is. There's so many variables that you can't really do it. Even the experts, the American Statistical Association has said, no, you can't use tests to judge a teacher. It's just impossible.
Gotcha. And with that as well, so what should be happening? What should their interaction with local school districts and boards look like?
What it's always looked like. I guess the main problem that was seen by this new Secretary Designate of Education, she asserted that, well, only 1% of teachers were being fired. And she was saying, well, obviously there's more than 1%. So what we say is, no, those are the people that had been terminated, that actually had gone through a termination process. Where you have a union, a strong union like in Albuquerque or here in Las Cruces, what we do is we work with the districts to counsel people out of the profession when they need it. If you go to any school district in the state and you look at their school board packets, they're supposed to have what's called resignations, terminations, retirements. And you can get this all across the state. You'll see that there's a ton of people in there. Good teachers who have decided, well, now it's time to retire. You'll also find teachers in there that have been guided out of the system. And we spared the districts and the state the expense of going through an expensive hearing. So we work with the districts. So there's a far more than 1% of teachers leaving the profession because they weren't good teachers.
So you're kind of saying that to terminate somebody's employment is, that's like a last resort.
Exactly. And yeah, 1% sounds about right. But when you hear it out of context, it sounds like, well, there must be a bunch of bad teachers in the profession. And that's clearly not true. And so you have to start thinking, well, why would she be doing this to us? And there's several reasons. One of them is that it masks the true issues that cost money, like lowering class size. That improves student achievement. To attract and retain the best professionals. That takes money, but it's what it takes. And so it's just a sleight of hand.
Gotcha. Could you kind of clarify for me what would be that method of kind of, say there is a bad teacher and that, they're someone that you don't want to be working in your system? What is
Absolutely.
the process as opposed to
It's
terminating
the
it?
same, I suppose, as you would want in any profession. What you do is you have an evaluation system that allows people to be judged by fellow professionals. In this case, a school principal, for instance, would go in, do an observation, gather data, even use test scores. I mean, to use a smaller amount, 50% is a bit much. There are school districts that allow up to 10%, 15%. Sure, make that part of these multiple measures. Now, once you see that a teacher is struggling, identify what they're having a problem with and help them improve. Give them the resources and the time to improve. That's a good evaluation system, but you also have to make it clear. You have to make it transparent. In this new system where these test scores are being used, I have teachers calling me now. They're in a panic. I don't understand my test scores. I don't understand why my evaluation was so low. And so we can't get the information. We have to write letters, public information requests from the PED. They're writing back saying, no, that's too burdensome. Maybe we'll get back to you in 6 or 7 months with the information. Well, what happens then? In the meantime, you don't know how to improve because you don't know where you need to improve. It's just ridiculous.
Gotcha. And on that as well, is there a case that, what is the problem with, there's a professional growth program. So, if you get a bad evaluation and you're a teacher, you're not necessarily going to lose your job. And there was some modifications to say, it's up to the school districts to ultimately determine whether they're going to lose their job or not.
That's the point I'm making. How can you improve if you don't know where you're lagging in skills? We have cases where a principal has gone in, they observe a teacher and they say, wow, you're doing a great job. And that's part of your evaluation, 25%. But then all of a sudden, the test scores come back, and this principal that has told you you're an outstanding teacher, you're doing everything that our profession has told us you should be doing, all of a sudden you come back with these test scores that take the score way down. So who's wrong, the principal and the teacher or the test scores? In this case, using 50% of the test scores, the deck is really stacked against you. They're also using teacher attendance as one of the indicators. Now, we here in the local, we bargain for, you have up to 10 days a year for sick leave. The state is telling us, no, if you miss more than 2 days, then you're going to be marked lower on those. That's clearly usurping our collectively bargained agreement, and that's a no-no.
But there is that option that they can choose between teacher attendance and student and parent based evaluations.
That seemed to be the case. Last year we had a huge rally. We were very outspoken about, no, you can't use teacher attendance. So they had another option, which was student survey. In the case of the kindergartners, you could use parent survey. We found all kinds of problems with that. There were security breaches. You could go into the system and you could give a survey on a teacher across the state that you didn't even have. It was clearly a dumb, stupid system, to use technical terms.
Okay. With that as well, is there any other element of this usurping, as you said, of the kind of local school districts and administrations and teachers free, not, I don't want to say power, but, capacity to kind of determine how they're being run?
I don't know. Let me tell you how inane this system is. We have a teacher here, a great teacher, and he's going to come out publicly, so you'll know his name. And he happens to teach AP classes, advanced placement. This guy's good, math teacher. He can get 78% of his kids to score high on the AP exam, which the state says, this is the same state organization that's running this crazy system, and they'll say to him, we're going to give you $5,000 extra because of your high marks. Now, this same system has rated him as an ineffective, basically barely effective teacher. How can that be, the same system? You're doing great, but you're lousy. It's just insane.
Gotcha. Is there any other elements to it though that, like, what could you? Is there any more elements to the case that you feel like is worth kind of going over?
Well,
Excuse me, we're talking about.
in June of last year, actually June of this year, a group called MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, filed a suit. Theirs was largely based on funding issues. But in that suit, they also pointed out that there has been no system developed to evaluate teachers based on student test scores. We're finding here in Las Cruces what we've known all along. If you are a teacher of English language learners, or if you teach special needs students, guess what's going to happen to those test scores? They're not going to be as high. So how do you attract the best teachers to teach our students that are most in need? It's craziness. It does the opposite. It drives good people out of the profession.
Gotcha.
So this cannot stand.
I wanted to get some kind of concepts. You kind of, when I spoke to you earlier on the phone, you mentioned that this is, it's quite based here in Las Cruces. Like, could you talk about the NEA down here's kind of role in it, any other collaborators, and I know there's some national backing.
We have a group called People Against the Standardization of Students, PASS. They're an allied group. We also have MALDEF. We have another group called Engage, and they're looking at the bigger picture. They're looking about at why students are not successful. And lo and behold, they're coming up with these ideas that we've been saying all along. Students from poverty have more problems in school. It's like a lightning bolt hit us. It's like they need wraparound services. They need food. They need a place to study at night. They need families that aren't in crisis. All of these things are what are going to make kids successful. So those are our allies here. We certainly have professors at the university that are jumping in to help us because they see this for what it is. It's an attempt to privatize our public schools.
Gotcha. Is that something that would come up in the case though, or is it more just the basis of the case is,
The basic of the case is very simple. It's just that the governor and our Secretary of Education are usurping the power reserved to local districts. And clearly that's one way to attack this problem. And there are assorted problems that are just part of this issue of teacher evaluation. And it causes lots of problems. What drives the over-testing in the schools is this stupid evaluation system. What narrows the curriculum are the fact that we have more tests now and people want to do well at tests, so you have to teach to the test. That narrows the curriculum. And so it's really affecting our kids. In the long run, it's going to really hurt us.
Cool. That's interesting. What I wanted to ask you as well is there has been some other kind of, I guess, legislative attempts to, remove or modify the evaluation system, or kind of add other things to work with it. Could you kind of speak to those? Do they have any relation to your case? Is this another attempt?
Absolutely. We have attempted to be reasonable. We know there's many sides to this issue. My organization, sometimes we take a big hit for it from some of our members because they see us working with the enemy. We're willing to work with anybody, anywhere to come up with sensible solutions. A good example of that was during the legislature, many plans were floated that we were a part of that said, honestly, we don't like using test scores for evaluation, but Arnie Duncan, Secretary of Education, has touted New York's plan that uses 15% of a teacher's evaluation based on tests. 15%, though I don't like it, sounds reasonable. We're willing to listen to ideas like that. So obviously, if you followed the legislature, those have been either vetoed by the governor or we can't come to consensus. But there have been some very good plans floated. One did get its way through the legislature. That was offered by Senator Howie Morales. He was a governor's candidate. His plan passed with our support. The governor vetoed it.
So is there this element of, could you kind of speak to, you've made a pretty, consistent attempt to work collaboratively and kind of have input in, meet in the middle with the kind of the administration in terms of, working these ideas out?
Yes, clearly. At the beginning of the governor's administration, it was clear she wanted to alter, change the evaluation system. She created a group called New Mexico Teach. The other union in the state, the American Federation of Teachers, wanted nothing to do with this system. We felt it was incumbent on us to be in the room to help make these decisions. 2 years went along, and it became apparent that the governor and the secretary designate were not interested in hearing any of our input from either administrators, superintendents, or the teachers represented by the National Education Association. It became a farce. It became a rubber stamp. They wouldn't listen to any of our ideas. And so we feel compelled at this point to file the lawsuit.
And could you speak to how significant is this? Obviously, this is being rolled out nationally. How significant is this in the context of education nationally?
Well, it remains to be seen. You'll see in different states there have been similar efforts. In Florida, we've had a similar lawsuit. Some of the lawyers on that case are assisting us with ours. Tennessee's another good example. What's weird is one of the accompanying problems is the push to Common Core. And I know you've looked at Common Core before. Common Core in and of itself is just standards, right? It's national standards. And at first we thought, well, that doesn't sound too bad. We have state standards we've always had. And New Mexico's were actually very high. We complained a lot of times because that set the benchmark for some of our testing. We never came out very good on testing our students because our benchmarks were so high. So we felt at the beginning that having national standards, we get to finally compare apples to apples, and we'll know exactly where we stand. Testing is, there's useful data that you can be gleaning from testing. So this Common Core curriculum was rolled in along with the PARC test, which is the test to test Common Core. Now, what's happened is you have these publishing companies coming in, sensing that they can make a buck, and they're selling districts canned curriculum. They're selling them materials that's marked Common Core. And really what this has turned into is a big bonanza for large publishing companies, Pearson to name one. And it's just another way. They smell money in public schools and they're coming after it. And the people being affected by it are, of course, the teachers, the professionals who work there, but more importantly, the kids. Because again, it's narrowing the curriculum. And it's, negating the whole purpose for public school, which is to create lifelong learners and good citizens and people that, are well-rounded, well-balanced, not just robots for the workforce.
Could you speak to why local involvement or overseeing of, public schools and education is so important?
That's a softball. We all are invested in the system. My wife and I have 4 kids that we put through the system. This is very personal for us. It is about the future. I know it sounds corny, but this is about the future, not only of our community, but of our nation. And all indicators are showing things are not going well. And this is the wrong way to pursue improvement.
But on a local level, why does there need to be the local people in Las Cruces saying this is what we need in our schools? And why does Albuquerque need the Albuquerque people saying this is what we need in our schools? Absolutely.
Now, if you have uniform standards, things won't be that different. But how we operate here in Las Cruces, for instance, it's just the law, and it's the way it's always worked best is we determine what's best for our community and for our kids. We have a very unique set of kids here. A lot of English language learners. We have a high percentage of special needs kids. So we are a very unique place in a very unique part of the world with very unique problems like poverty that need to be addressed uniquely. and we are best suited to come up with those answers.
Cool. That's kind of what I was getting at. Yeah. And I just want to clarify, this is more just for my own personal
Sure.
background, but just, it's going to be on tape. What were the cases in, first of all, Florida, then Tennessee looking at? Was it the same kind of, clash over who has control or who has input?
Largely based on the use of what we called value-added modeling, or VAM. And to be sure, I'll stipulate there is a science of VAM. It's a very elegant statistical science. But even the statisticians themselves say you cannot extrapolate the performance of a child's test score and then extrapolate that and make any kind of judgment on the teacher, one teacher. Think about me with 8th graders. There has been a world of education starting at home and then through 7 other grades, or 8 if you include kindergarten, that have come before me. So you're going to judge me based on the test scores of, the variables for each child are too numerous to list. It's impossible. That science does not exist yet.
So basically those cases were different approaches to just getting rid of or minimizing the kind of role of value-added measures.
Absolutely, yes.
Cool. Is there anything else, any other complexity or elements of this case that you feel like need to be mentioned, or I haven't given you a chance to speak about?
Actually, the other element here, that's one way to attack the problem, is the lawsuit. And it's a good way, and it's long overdue. Another way to attack this, unfortunately, I guess, is politics. We are often criticized for being a political organization, and we're completely nonpartisan. In fact, 40% of our members are Republicans. Even though we're a union, we have very conservative members that are part of our organization. They see this for what it is. It's a political attack. Depending on who wins the governor's race, I know that Gary King, one of the candidates, he has said his first official act will be to get rid of the secretary designate and put a moratorium on the high stakes testing. And so there is a political solution.
Cool. What I also want to clarify, when do you think the case will be heard, and where, what court?
It'll be dropped probably in Santa Fe. I'm not sure. It'll be in Santa Fe, and we will have some plaintiffs from Las Cruces. So they'll come from around the state. It's our state organization, obviously supported by the organization here in Las Cruces, and we're hoping for a positive outcome. We do realize it's a lengthy system. If one side loses at the first level, there is sure to be an appeal. But we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it to win.
Cool. And is there, so would it be in like a state Supreme Court, or where would it be heard?
No, it'll probably eventually end up in the state Supreme Court. It'll start in a district court.
Okay, and hence why you mentioned Santa Fe.
Yes.
Okay. Any other complexities to it you feel like need to be mentioned?
No, I'm sure that it'll be an ongoing issue, and we'll have many more conversations as this goes on.
Is there anything relating the plaintiffs are teachers, school board members? Who could you kind of give me a general idea of who these people are?
They're classroom teachers by and large. They're being adversely affected, and their students are being adversely affected by this ridiculous system.
And so their angle would be, because of this lack of local input, I'm suddenly teaching I can't address my problems with my second language students.
Absolutely.
Specific problems.
Yes.
Cool. All right. That's pretty much it.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Simon.